At a family dinner, I sat at the table with a broken arm. I couldn't even hold a fork, so I sat there starving. The guests were silent. My daughter calmly said, "My husband taught her a lesson." My son-in-law boasted loudly. The old woman thought she ran things, but I proved otherwise. I just smiled. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. When my son-in-law opened it, he was shown who was really in charge. Friends, before we start this story, I want to ask you a small favor. If what you hear resonates with your heart, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. And in the comments, let me know what city or state you're listening from. It always warms my spirit to see how many of us are out there. Enjoy the story. The smell of roast duck with apples, thick and buttery, hung in the air like a fog. To anyone else, that aroma would have been a promise of celebration, a symbol of comfort and family warmth. But for me, sitting at the head of the table in my own dining room, it was just a reminder of my helplessness. I stared at my plate, bone-white china, delicate, with a gold rim, part of a set my late husband and I bought down in the French Quarter 40 years ago. The plate was empty, perfectly clean and empty. To my right, where my right hand should have been, rested a heavy, clumsy plaster cast. It felt cold and alien, like a stone tied to my body. The swelling under the cast throbbed. Every heartbeat sent a dull, aching pain through my forearm, shooting up to my shoulder. My radius bone was fractured with displacement. I knew it even before I saw the X-ray. I heard that snap, a dry, sickening sound like a dead branch cracking when Tivarius shoved me into the doorframe. "Come on, y'all, don't be shy." Tivarius's voice, loud and entitled, rolled through the room, drowning out the clinking of silverware. "The duck today is just magnificent. Havasha really outdid herself." Tivarius sat in my husband's seat, the high-backed chair upholstered in dark velvet. He had unbuttoned his charcoal gray suit jacket. His face was already shiny from the heat and the liquor. He wielded his knife and fork with barbaric energy, sawing off huge chunks of meat and shoveling them into his mouth, barely chewing. Grease ran down his chin, and he wiped it carelessly with the back of his hand. Around the table sat his guests, 2 men and a woman, a subordinate of his from City Hall. They ate in silence, keeping their eyes on their plates. They felt the tension hanging in the air, thick as the humidity before a storm. They saw me, a gray-haired black woman with a straight back and a cast on her arm, sitting there without a crumb of food, but they were terrified of him. Tivarius was their boss, a petty little king whose signature determined their bonuses and vacations. I tried to wiggle the fingers of my left hand. They obeyed, but I couldn't lift the heavy platter of duck sitting in the center of the table. It was too far, and my good side couldn't reach. To ask would be to beg. Tivarius, one of the guests, a young brother in glasses, said quietly, not daring to look up. Maybe we should serve Ms. Upilia some. Stay out of it, Marcus." Tivarius cut him off, pouring himself another shot of expensive cognac. The bottle clinked against the crystal glass. "Ms. Oilia is on a diet today. Therapeutic fasting is very good for clearing the mind. Isn't that right, Mama?" He looked at me, his eyes cloudy with liquor. There wasn't a drop of remorse, only triumph. The triumph of a predator who had finally cornered the old lioness and was now enjoying her weakness. "Mama brought it on herself," Javasha chimed in. My daughter sat to her husband's left. She was wearing a beige dress that didn't suit her complexion. It washed her out, making her look tired and pale. Javisha was meticulously cutting a cucumber into tiny slices, avoiding my gaze. "She knows she's getting up there in age," Tivarius continued, addressing the guests as if telling a funny story at a barber shop. "Coordination ain't what it used to be. Legs get tangled up. She tried to climb up to the attic yesterday. Can you believe that? I told her, 'Where you going, old woman?' But she wouldn't listen. And down she went. Lucky she didn't break her neck." He laughed. The guests forced out polite, tight smiles. I looked at my daughter. For 30 years, I operated on people. I saw the human brain in real life. I knew where memory hid, where speech lived, and where fear resided. But I couldn't find the moment in my memory where I lost my daughter. When she turned into this shadow, this echo of her worthless husband. "It was an accident," Havasha said quietly, finally lifting her eyes to mine. Fear was swimming in them. Not for me, for herself. But it was a necessary lesson. "Mama, you have to learn to listen to the head of the family. You aren't at work anymore. You don't give the orders here. My stomach twisted with a spasm of hunger. I hadn't eaten in almost 24 hours, not since the moment Tavarius, demanding the deed to the condo, threw me into the hallway wall. The pain in my broken bones pulsed in time with the ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the corner. Tick-tock, tick-tock. That was my father's clock. It always kept perfect time. Tavarius raised his glass. To discipline, he proclaimed. A house must have order and hierarchy. The one who pays the bills calls the tunes, and the one living on charity sits quiet and stays out of the way. He tossed the cognac down his throat, grunted, and stabbed a pickled mushroom with his fork. I felt something inside me, somewhere deep beneath my ribs, shift from resentment to cold ice. A familiar feeling, that same icy calm that used to descend on me when I walked into the OR. When the anesthesiologist nodded, "Patient is ready," and I took the scalpel in my fingers. Emotions are just noise. Anger causes tremors. And I needed to be steady. I didn't cry. Tears are for those hoping for pity. I hoped for nothing. I knew. I shifted my gaze to the clock face. The hands moved inexorably forward. 7:59 p.m. Silence hung in the room, broken only by Tavarius's chewing. He felt like a winner. He thought he had broken me along with my bone. He thought this cast was a symbol of my defeat. I straightened my back as much as the pain allowed and took a deep breath. Tavarius. My voice came out quiet but distinct. It sliced through the thick air of the dining room like a surgical instrument. Tavarius froze with his fork near his mouth. The guests stopped chewing. Even Javisha went still. "What you want?" he grumbled, not turning around. "You are sitting in my husband's chair," I said, looking straight at the back of his head. "And by my calculations, you have exactly 1 minute left to enjoy it." Tarius turned slowly, his face flushed, lips twisting into a smirk. "Excuse me," he asked, a threat rising in his voice. "You threatening me, old hag, or what? You going to hit me with your cast?" He burst out laughing, and his laugh, coarse and barking, bounced off the high ceiling. "Oh, I'm so scared. I'm shaking," he mocked, turning to the guests. "Look, y'all, she's timing me. Go ahead, count. 59 seconds. 58. I didn't answer. I just watched the second hand trembling as it approached the vertical line. I knew something he didn't know. I knew that the mechanisms I had set in motion worked just as precisely as that clock. Tavarius didn't know that the silence in this apartment wasn't submission. It was a countdown. The second hand completed its final rotation, and exactly at the moment it touched the 12, the pain in my arm flared with new force, seemingly transporting me back in time. Exactly 24 hours ago. That evening, the air in the apartment didn't smell of roast duck. It reeked of the sour stench of fear and stale liquor. Tavarius was pacing the living room, bumping into corners. He looked like a trapped rat, sweaty, eyes darting, hands shaking. "I need the money, you old witch," he screamed, spitting as he spoke. "Do you understand how much I owe? These ain't jokes. These are serious people." I stood in the doorway of my bedroom, blocking his path. "This is my husband's apartment," I answered calmly, "and as long as I am breathing, it will not be sold to cover your gambling debts." That was the mistake, not the refusal, the belief that I was still dealing with a human being. In that moment, the human inside Tavarius finally gave way to the animal terror of his creditors. He lunged at me. I saw his dilated pupils, the whites of his eyes bloodshot. The shove was sharp and unexpectedly strong for such a soft man. He didn't just push me, he threw his whole weight into it, tossing me like a rag doll. I flew backward. My right hand instinctively went up to protect my face from hitting the doorframe. Crack. I would recognize that sound out of 1,000. The dry, sickening snap of breaking bone. The world shrank to a single burning point in my forearm. A hot wave of nausea rolled up to my throat. I slid down the wall onto the hardwood floor, clutching my unnaturally bent wrist. Javisha was standing in the hallway. She saw everything. The shove, the snap, the fall. But she didn't rush to me. She pressed her hands to her cheeks and whispered, "Mama, why you got to provoke him? Just sign the papers." Tavarius, breathing heavily, loomed over me. "See," he wheezed, "your own fault. Tripped, you old fool." He darted to the landline and yanked the cord out of the wall. Then he snatched my phone out of my robe pocket. "No calls," he growled. "Sit here and think. The notary is coming tomorrow. If you don't sign nicely, I'll put you in a home. I'll tell him you're senile and violent. I got people everywhere. He slammed the door and turned the key in the lock. I was left alone in the dark on the floor with an arm that felt like it was on fire. But Tavarius, for all his cunning, was a petty bureaucrat. He knew how to steal budgets, but he knew nothing about people like me. He forgot who I was before I became a useless old woman. I was a doctor. Panic is a luxury a surgeon cannot afford. Fighting through the pain so strong it blurred my vision, I crawled to the old wardrobe. With my left hand, I felt around until I found a worn leather satchel, my emergency kit. Inside, an ampule of painkillers, a syringe, an old burner phone I kept charged once a month. I gave myself the shot. With trembling fingers, I put the battery in the phone. The screen lit with a dim greenish glow. Signal found. Who to call? 911. Useless. The local precinct captain drank with Tavarius every Sunday. I needed someone above all this filth. Memory whispered a phone number I had not dialed in 20 years. Numbers like this you keep in your head. Ring, 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 speak. A deep, commanding male voice. It's Oilia, I said. My voice shook from pain. I need help. A single second of silence. Location. No greeting. No hesitation. A soldier's reflex. I gave the address. Stand by. A sharp ring at the door pulled me back to the present. The grandfather clock chimed 8 times. The doorbell rang again. Long, loud, demanding. The glass in the china cabinet rattled. Tavarius flinched, then grinned smugly. Well, look at that, he said, rising unsteadily. And you were worried. That's the notary, he explained to the guests, winking. We're gonna sign one little paper, and y'all relax. Family business. Javisha exhaled in relief. Mama, please just sign it. I gripped the chair with my left hand. My right arm throbbed like a living thing, but adrenaline drowned the pain. Tavarius swaggered into the foyer. I heard the lock click. Come in, my friend. We've been waiting on you. His voice cut off. Not faded. Cut, like a wire snapped. The dining room froze. Then we heard it. Heavy, rhythmic thuds on the hardwood. Combat boots. Not the steps of a notary. Not of any bureaucrat. This was the stride of power. Tavarius wheezed. Governor Thorne. The woman from City Hall dropped her fork. The name sucked the air out of the room. Governor Thorne. A man whose signature decided the fate of the entire state. Not someone who visited family dinners. Tavarius stumbled back into the dining room, bowing to someone behind him. Governor, sir, what an honor. Two massive men in tactical gear stepped into the room first. No insignia, no expression, just presence. The living room shrank around them. And then, he walked in. Cassius Thorne, older now, silver hair, new lines around his eyes. Still built like a wall. But in his hands, a small bouquet of wild blue hydrangeas. Tavarius stepped forward, shaking, hand stretched for a handshake. The governor did not see him. Did not acknowledge him. Walked right past him like he was furniture. His eyes were locked on me. He walked to my chair, stopping only when he stood beside me. He saw the untouched food, the bruised fingers peeking from the cast, the hunger, the humiliation. A muscle in his jaw twitched. His face drained of color. He knelt, Governor Thorne, on one knee beside my chair. He placed the hydrangeas gently beside my empty plate. Then he put his large, warm hand over my trembling left hand. Miss Oilia, he said softly. His voice alone made the crystal tremble. You said you fell, he whispered. But you didn't tell me you were starving. He rose slowly. Then he turned, toward the head of the table. Toward the chair Tavarius believed he owned. He placed one hand on the chair. He did not speak. He didn't need to. Tavarius gave up the seat so fast he nearly fell. Terror hollowed his eyes. The governor sat. The true head of the table had arrived. Then his eyes fell on the utensils Tavarius had thrown on the tablecloth. Greasy. Dirty. Cassius pushed them aside with his pinky finger in disgust. One of the security guards materialized like a shadow and placed a clean set before the governor, pulled from somewhere inside his tactical vest. Cassius picked up the fork. He didn't look at Tavarius. He didn't look at Javisha. He didn't look at the terrified guests. He looked only at my empty plate. Then he slowly turned his head toward the roast duck. A silence settled over the room so heavy it pressed against people's ribs. The governor of the entire state, a man whose lunch meetings could redirect millions of dollars, reached for the platter and served me food himself. Not a servant, not a cook, not my daughter, not my son-in-law. Him. Carefully, he placed slices of duck onto my plate. He added apples. He added the gravy. He arranged it as if it were a sacred ritual. Then he lifted the fork and knife. "May I?" he asked softly. My throat tightened. I nodded. Cassius cut the food into bite-sized pieces with the precision of someone deeply familiar with discipline. Then, very gently, he lifted a forkful toward my lips. I opened my mouth. I took the bite. The room exploded in whispers. Javish's face flushed with humiliation. The guests stared in shock. Tavarius looked like a man who had just seen the devil walk through a church door. Cassius placed the fork down and finally, turned his gaze toward my son-in-law. Tavarius. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Tavarius's knees nearly buckled. Yes, Governor Thorne, sir. Cassius tapped one finger on the tablecloth. Come here. Tavarius took 2 shaky steps forward. Cassius didn't speak for several seconds. He let the silence do the bleeding. Then, you laid hands on her. The question was quiet, terrifyingly quiet. Tavarius swallowed hard, sweat dripping down his temple. "Yes, sir." She tripped. "She's old, you know how." Cassius stood. Everyone stopped breathing. He walked around the table, each step deliberate, each footfall heavy enough to shake the floorboards. Tavarius backed up until he hit the wall. Cassius stopped inches from him. "You shoved her," he said, voice low. "You broke her arm. And no, I." Cassius leaned in, his face close enough that Tavarius could feel the governor's breath. "You starved her." Tavarius whimpered. "You locked her in a room." Tavarius pressed flat against the wall, trembling violently. "You tried to steal her home." I. Cassius stepped back. He looked over his shoulder at his security detail. "Take him." The 2 guards moved like shadows. Tavarius screamed. He tried to run, but they grabbed him by the arms so effortlessly it looked like they were lifting a child. "Governor. Please. Governor." It was a misunderstanding. Javisha shot out of her chair. "No, don't take him. Mama, please say something." I didn't speak. Cassius raised a hand. The guards halted. He looked at Javisha, long and hard. "You allowed this," he said. "You watched." Javisha opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Cassius turned to the guards. "Remove him." They dragged Tavarius down the hall. His screams echoed through the apartment. "No, please. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Mama Oilia, please. Please." The front door slammed shut behind them. Silence. Cassius turned back to me. His expression softened instantly. "Your daughter may remain," he said, "if you want her to." Javisha fell to her knees, sobbing. "Mama, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to stop him." I looked at her. Her dress, her shaking hands, her ruined mascara. I didn't speak. Cassius approached my chair again, pulling it gently away from the table. "Your medical team is on the way," he said softly. "I've arranged everything." He paused. "Miss Oilia." His voice dipped into something deeper. Something heavy with years of unspoken memory. "You should have called me sooner." For the first time that night, I let myself breathe. Truly breathe. Because I realized, this wasn't the night I lost everything. It was the night I got it all back. Asterisk.